Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be showing off the new MysteRune archetype, the archetype that people are calling the Skyrim archetype. That is a new Deckout deck. So it's no surprise that we're getting some archetype. Maybe this was actually inspired by Elden Ring. Sometimes when things are popular in like social media, sometimes Yu-Gi-Oh does take some inspiration. Like with the Cosmos, we had the Star Wars archetype, but this is basically Skyrim. But what's interesting with this is it's kind of a Deckout deck. That's kind of how it's essentially being played, at least as of right now. There are multiple ways to actually build this deck, but we're going to be mainly focusing in on the Deckout version here because that's kind of what the deck wants to do. So it is a deck that's all about spell cards, specifically quick play spell cards that you're going to be activating during your opponent's turn. Which is actually going to be done through the field spell, which lets you activate them. So if you're familiar with like Magical Musketeers, kind of think of it like that. But starting right off, you see an Extravagance activated. This deck doesn't really need the extract. There is like one card that you need, and that's about it. So all the cards really just give you some small advantage, whether it's pop a card or banishing some cards off the top of your opponent's deck. That's basically what the deck does. Very small effects, but the thing that makes this deck so good is every single time you're using a quick play, and that's both players is using a quick play, to see if the MysteRune is going to banish one card from the top of their deck. And you might be thinking one card, like good luck actually trying to win with that. Well, with the Spring of the MysteRune, which is their field spell card, you're going to be able to have this effect where you can activate quick play spell cards from your hand during your opponent's turn. We'll go over some of the effects of the other ones, but I want to go over the core like win condition first. And then on top of that, once per turn, if you activate a MysteRune quick play, you can target up to 3 MysteRune quick play spell cards in your graveyard. You place them on the bottom of the deck in any order, then you get to draw that many cards. So basically, every single turn, you're going to be drawing lots and lots of cards. So as long as you activate it, bam, 3 cards during your turn, your opponent's turn. It's just so much free advantage. And that's how it actually plays. It's a deck that kind of out-resources your opponent. Now, he actually kind of made a mistake. He actually probably should have got rid of that card. But eventually, he was going to get another copy of this card. So it was really hard for him. Even though he had a Dragoon with massive amounts of attack, nothing was going to get through. He actually popped the field spell. But the thing is that it doesn't really matter because this card would have given him more advantage. But he kept this card up, and then another one is activated, he's going to banish the card, then he can't draw, then he loses. So it's basically, again, a Deckout oriented deck. Now I want to go over some of the other cards. Like I mentioned before, it's kind of weird. It's like some people call it the Doom archetype or Skyrim. I'm not sure. Let me know down below what you guys think this deck is supposed to be a reference to. Is it supposed to be Doom? Because there are references to Doom and there's also references to Skyrim. My guess is maybe even Elden Ring, because again, that game is really popular and it recently came out. So again, sometimes people live off the hype train of other games through other games. Anyways, nonetheless, one of the most important cards actually in the deck that I do got to go over, it's the only monster that the deck really uses. It's Moonin Wings of the MysteRune. So it requires 2 MysteRune monsters, but don't worry, it's really easy to summon. You just use another card to activate to summon it. But as long as it's special summon, from the extract, you discard 1 card and you get to add a MysteRune continuous spell card from your deck to your hand, which is of course the card that lets you banish stuff. And then when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a MysteRune card or cards and or set cards you control, as a quick effect, you can banish this card you control and you get to negate the activation if you destroy that card. Once per turn during the end phase, you get to gain 1,000 life points. So that's the basic core concepts of the deck. Now, obviously, you have to be able to use your other cards, and we're going to go over those now. So the Freezing Curse, I'm just going to call it like whatever the card is. Not like, I'm not going to say MysteRune on every single card, but Freezing Curse over here, they're all quick play spells pretty much. But activate one of these effects, you skip the next battle phase, but don't worry, you never battle phase anyways. So you're going to target one effect monster your opponent controls, you get to negate its effect and then banish the top 3 cards of their deck, or you get to special summon a MysteRune monster from your extract to the extra monster zone. You can only use 1 of them per turn. So let's either special summon or negate an effect. That's the effect of Freezing Curse, is one of the best cards. Then we have Dispel over here, and you get to activate one of these effects, you lose the battle phase. If your opponent adds a card or cards from the deck to hand, except during the draw phase, you discard 1 random card from their hand, then banish the top 2 cards of their deck. The effect is to special summon a MysteRune monster from your extract to a extra monster zone. You can only use 1 of them per turn. Let's check out some more over here. Let's watch Eldritch Losers because you know, I hate playing against it all in Master Duel. But nonetheless, we have the Destruction over here. This lets you pop a spell trap card your opponent controls, or lets you special summon a MysteRune monster. So they'll always pretty much have this card at their disposal. There's another card that lets you protect your things. So Brilliant Frame over here lets you target opponent's special summon monster and destroy it. Then you banish the top 2 cards of their deck, or you get to special summon a MysteRune monster. You can only activate 1 per turn. Like I mentioned before, the deck doesn't really go for very many cards except for the Searcher. There are other cards, and I'll go over them really quick. So they have a fairy named the Hugin, the Wings of the MysteRune. So if this card is possible from the extra deck, you discard a card, add a MysteRune field spell from your deck to your hand, and if another card or cards you control will be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card you control instead. So basically kind of protects your stuff, but most people usually end up going for this card first. But that card still does see some play. It's just more likely it's almost always this one because it adds the continuous, because you need this one to basically get your deck started. Now, Jerry or Gary over here is another fusion monster. This card is supposed from the extra deck. You target one MysteRune spell card in your grave, except for a quick play, and add it back to your hand. It can't be destroyed by card effects. And this card is destroyed by battle, you can target one card in the field to destroy it. So this is kind of like your extra stall card. Most of the cards are all stall cards, but again, most of the time it's always Moonin, just so you can start gaining some life points to get annoying. This is a card that always really comes out earlier on the game, and then sometimes they may use other cards to recycle, but you usually want to use your Spring of the MysteRune to have those targets, because you got to put up to 3 of them to get max value. Now, the thing that's so good with this is if one of them gets disrupted, it is an up to 3. So like if someone banishes whenever, it won't matter that much because it's an up to 3, so you can still target like less. Obviously it's better to get more, like why wouldn't you want it? But nonetheless, I do have some more gameplay of a different build, so if you guys are new here and you do want to see the other builds, I will be dropping a video later down the line, so subscribe to the channel if you are new here and you do want to see that in the future. Turn that bell and you'll see it. But let's roll another gameplay here, and I'll also give you guys the deck profile for this build, but again, it's mostly a deck out variant. So at least right now, that's kind of the only way you can really play the deck effectively. But another really great card, I haven't really seen that many people play it, but shout out to my homie Magus for sending me this gameplay of it. I didn't even think about this. Trickstar Reincarnation really helps out because especially if you get it turn 1, he's saying like, you get this turn 1, it's like GG's, and I totally get it because a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh decks will search out a bunch of different cards, and if you go first in the MysteRune deck, there really isn't that much for you to do other than establish a board. There's no like real negations other than like you get to negate the effect of one card. You do have some disruptions, but they're all from your hand, so your opponent can't like expect it, if that kind of makes sense, unless of course you're searching out the cards and you're holding them in your hand. But it's kind of more difficult to interrupt your opponent activating cards from their hand. So this card is kind of susceptible to other things, but if you're able to immediately maybe your opponent searches out a card that maybe would pop this, because this card is what really makes the deck get started and going. And you know, right now not many people playing MST or anything. I mean, heck, you could even run a skill drain in this deck, and that's another way that you could play. Like I said, there's another way to play this deck. There's even Grand Maju variant, although Grand Maju variant is kind of hard to play realistically because you're going to be banishing a lot of your opponent's stuff, but nonetheless you can banish your own stuff, and there are other ways to again build the deck, and I'll go over that in a separate video. But I wanted to make this one dedicated to the introduction of this because this is like what I would consider the pure archetype. Now what's even cooler is Super Poly is still a quick play, so you still actually banish your opponent's cards. So I think that this was another great addition that I haven't seen that many people play in their builds. And the reason why I like Super Poly is this deck going second, if your opponent happens to have certain cards that have too many negations, Super Poly is excellent. Obviously it does work really well in the deck because it is a quick play, and then you can just go for whatever. Again, you don't really need your extra deck in this deck, but obviously you got to have your Super Poly targets, and in the very beginning you can just activate it, and then later down the line if you want to extrav, because you can just draw a standby phase, and then like, you know, obviously, you know, going into this, it would be at the start of your main phase one, but it's a standby phase. Bam, you're ready to go. Clear the board, get rid of any problematic cards. But realistically, I think a lot of people aren't really playing any back row destruction. It's almost the same if you guys have been playing Master Duel. Not that many people play back row destruction. It's like Lightning Storm. Sometimes people play Duster. Sometimes you'll see like a red reboot. But this deck isn't really trap based, so like red reboot doesn't really matter. But like if you're able to add one more card to the MysteRune archetype, like if they do add one more like negation of like just some way to protect this from the hand, that would be insane. They have a fusion monster, like I said, one of them protects it. I think it's the fairy over here. Where is it? When your opponent activates a card that targets MysteRune and or set cards you control, you can banish this card and get the activation, and then this also does get some healing out. But if they added any quick play to somehow protect this card like instantly, that would be really good. And you can see the deck is consistent at decking out. But now that you guys have seen it in a gameplay, here is the deck profile. I'll link it over in the Discord just for a one-click download, but I'm going to mouse over the cards really quick so you do have it. But big shouts to my homie Magus for hooking me up with this. But thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it, and I'll see you guys in the next video, and I'm out. Peace.